Riot. The canine never barked at fellow officers until the day he fixated on a Secret Service agent at the Defense Summit and refused to back down. His handler tried to pull him away, but Riot wouldn't budge. When they finally checked the agent's credentials, what they found threw the entire summit into chaos. So who was this man, and what was Riot trying to warn them about? First, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us where in the world you're watching from. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. The gleaming marble lobby of the Grand Hyatt Washington buzzed with controlled chaos as security personnel conducted final sweeps before the International Defense Summit. Officer Matt Collins adjusted the tactical vest on Riot, his Belgian Malinois, while surveying the heightened security measures transforming the luxury hotel into a virtual fortress. "Final briefing in 5 minutes, announced Chief Deputy Marshal Simmons, her voice carrying the weight of someone responsible for protecting 24 of the world's most significant defense leaders. Matt gave Riot's vest one final check before heading toward the command post established in what normally served as the hotel's business center. The dog moved with fluid precision beside him, alert amber eyes scanning their surroundings with an intensity that had initially unnerved Matt when they were first paired 3 years ago. "Collins," Simmons nodded as he entered, "your sector is the Eastern Approach and main ballroom. Secretary of Defense arriving at 0930. Followed by the Joint Chiefs. Foreign dignitaries are already on site in secure accommodations." Matt studied the security map as Simmons continued briefing the assembled team leaders. The hotel had been cleared of all regular guests 2 days earlier, transformed into a multi-layered security zone with concentric perimeters of increasingly stringent access requirements. "We've integrated personnel from 5 different agencies," Simmons concluded. "Everyone's been triple vetted, but standard protocol applies. If you see something questionable, report it immediately. No exceptions for rank or agency. Questions?" The room remained silent, each team leader already mentally rehearsing their responsibilities for the day ahead. As the briefing dispersed, Matt guided Riot toward their assigned sector for the preliminary sweep. The Eastern Approach included the VIP entrance, where motorcades would arrive, a particularly vulnerable point, requiring meticulous attention. They passed through 3 security checkpoints, Matt presenting his credentials at each. At the final checkpoint, a dark-haired officer with a close-cropped beard examined Matt's ID with professional scrutiny. "Collins and Riot, K9 Unit," the officer read, his eyes flicking between the ID and Matt's face. His nameplate identified him as Frank Castle, Secret Service. "You're cleared for all areas except the Secure Communications Center." Something subtle shifted in Riot's demeanor, a nearly imperceptible tensing of muscles that most handlers would miss. Matt noticed immediately, but attributed it to the dog's response to the heightened security atmosphere. "Understood," Matt replied, accepting his credentials back. "We're conducting the final sweep of the Eastern Approach before motorcades arrive." Officer Castle nodded. "We've already cleared it, but redundancy is standard protocol today." Outside, morning sunlight gleamed off barricades and security vehicles. Secret Service agents with communications earpieces positioned themselves strategically, while snipers established presence on nearby rooftops. The first motorcades would arrive in less than an hour, beginning the most high-risk phase of the day's operations. Matt felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that came with protecting high-value targets. Beside him, Riot remained unusually focused on the checkpoint they'd just passed, his attention repeatedly drawn back toward Officer Castle's station. "Focus up, buddy," Matt murmured. "We've got work to do." As they began their sweep, the dog's normally fluid movement pattern changed subtly. His head kept turning back toward the security checkpoint, ears pricked forward with unusual fixation. "What is it, boy?" Matt asked quietly, trusting the dog's heightened senses. In 3 years, working together, he'd learned to read Riot's body language with remarkable precision, a necessity given their history. They'd been paired after Matt's transfer from Denver PD's regular patrol to the specialized K9 unit. The transition hadn't been his choice initially. A shootout that left his previous partner hospitalized had pushed department psychologists to recommend reassignment. What was meant as temporary had become permanent when he and Riot had proven unexpectedly compatible despite rocky beginnings. Riot had washed out with two previous handlers who couldn't manage his intensity. The Belgian Malinois possessed uncommon drive and focus, even for his breed, making him challenging but exceptionally effective when properly directed. Matt's quiet confidence and analytical approach had provided the structure Riot needed, while the dog's unrelenting commitment had helped pull Matt from the professional isolation he'd retreated into after the shooting. As they completed their initial sweep, Matt made a casual decision to pass by Officer Castle's checkpoint again, curious about Riot's earlier reaction. The moment they approached, Riot's behavior shifted, his ears forward, muscles tensing under the tactical vest. "Everything secure here?" Matt asked Castle conversationally, observing the officer more carefully this time. Castle looked up from checking another agent's credentials. "All clear? You find anything on your sweep?" "Nothing concerning," Matt replied, noting the officer's steady hands and direct eye contact, nothing outwardly suspicious, just being thorough. But Riot had positioned himself subtly between Matt and Castle, a protective stance he rarely adopted without specific command. The behavior wasn't aggressive, but conveyed clear alertness directed specifically at the Secret Service officer. "Your dog seems on edge," Castle observed, his expression neutral. "Picking up on the tension, I guess." "He's highly sensitive to changes in security environments," Matt explained, watching Castle's reaction carefully. "Sometimes alerts to things before we understand why." "Military K-9?" Castle asked, glancing at Riot with professional interest. "Started there, specialized in personnel security and behavioral threat assessment before transferring to police work." Something flickered briefly in Castle's eyes. So quick, Matt nearly missed it. Interest? Concern? Before he could analyze it further, his radio crackled with news of the secretary's imminent arrival. As they moved away, Matt noticed Riot's continued attention toward Castle, an unusual persistence that didn't match his typical behavior patterns. 2 years ago, he might have dismissed it as overstimulation in the high-stress environment. But their partnership had evolved beyond standard handler-canine dynamics into something more intuitive. The Westlake incident had taught him that painful lesson. During a routine diplomatic security detail, Riot had alerted repeatedly on a staff member with perfect credentials. Matt had dismissed it as a distraction, only to discover later the staffer had been gathering intelligence for a foreign entity. The breach had been contained, but Matt had nearly lost Riot's trust in the process. "I hear you," Matt whispered, scratching behind Riot's ear, their private signal of trust. "We'll circle back after the secretary's arrival." By mid-morning, the summit was in full swing. The Secretary of Defense and Joint Chiefs had arrived without incident, whisked efficiently through the elaborate security measures into the conference center's secure areas. Matt and Riot had shifted to their secondary assignment, roving security through the building's eastern wing where staff and support personnel operated. The controlled chaos had intensified with each high-profile arrival. Security teams communicated in clipped, professional phrases, their hypervigilance creating an almost palpable tension throughout the building. Matt guided Riot through their patrol route, maintaining the appearance of routine while processing his growing concern about Officer Castle. Approaching the staff break area, Matt spotted Castle at the coffee station, engaged in a casual conversation with two other security personnel. The moment Riot saw him, the dog's demeanor changed dramatically. Hackles slightly raised, a low rumble in his chest that Matt felt through the leash rather than heard. "Easy," Matt murmured, keeping his voice calm while his mind raced. Riot's reaction had escalated from alertness to clear warning, a significant shift for a dog trained to remain composed in chaotic environments. Castle noticed their arrival, his conversation with colleagues trailing off mid-sentence. His smile remained professionally in place, but Matt caught the subtle tensing in his shoulders, the almost imperceptible shift in his stance. "Officer Collins," Castle acknowledged, "your partner still seems unsettled." "He's particularly focused today," Matt replied carefully, remembering all too clearly the consequences of ignoring Riot's alerts during the Westlake incident. "I'm actually glad I ran into you," Matt said, keeping his tone conversational. "There's been some confusion about checkpoint rotations. Would you mind clarifying your assignment schedule?" Castle checked his watch. an expensive timepiece Matt hadn't noticed earlier. I'm stationed at Eastern Checkpoint through 1400, then switching to conference room perimeter. The response came smoothly. Too smoothly, Matt thought, for information that should require checking a digital schedule. As they spoke, Riot had positioned himself with clear sightlines to Castle's hands, a tactical positioning he'd been trained for when sensing potential threats. Weird. That doesn't match what Simmons told me, Matt said, watching closely for reaction. Mind if I see your assignment sheet? Might be a miscommunication somewhere. Castle's expression remained neutral, but his eyes darted briefly toward the nearest exit before he replied. Don't carry it on me. It's in my gear at the checkpoint. Check with control if you're concerned. Before Matt could respond, their conversation was interrupted by a supervisor's radio call for all units to check in. Castle used the opportunity to excuse himself, moving with controlled quickness toward the eastern corridor. Unit 4, check in, the radio prompted. Unit 4, all clear, Matt responded automatically, watching Castle's departure with growing certainty that something was wrong. The officer moved differently now, more economical in his motions, more aware of his surroundings, his eyes systematically scanning security camera positions. As they resumed patrol, Matt mentally reviewed what he knew about Castle. The officer had proper credentials, correct uniform, and appropriate knowledge of security protocols. Yet Riot's increasingly urgent alerts couldn't be ignored, nor could the subtle inconsistencies in Castle's behavior, the expensive watch inconsistent with government salary, the too perfect recall of assignments, the momentary break in composure when questioned. With growing certainty, Matt keyed his radio. Control, this is Collins, requesting information on Secret Service Officer Frank Castle's assignment details. After a brief pause, Control responded, Stand by, Collins. The momentary delay confirmed Matt's suspicions. If Castle's credentials were legitimate, the response would have been immediate. Collins, verify your current position, Control requested, their tone shifting subtly. Eastern Corridor approaching Checkpoint 3, Matt replied, understanding the implied warning to proceed with caution. Acknowledged. Maintain position. Lieutenant Ramirez is moving to your location. Matt spotted Castle at the eastern checkpoint, systematically checking IDs with practiced efficiency. A line of staff members waiting for clearance provided perfect cover for Matt to approach without immediately raising alarm. He guided Riot to join the queue, positioning themselves where Castle would notice them only at the last moment. As they waited, Matt observed Castle's technique with renewed attention. The officer maintained professionally distant eye contact with each person, his verification process thorough yet rapid. Occasionally, his hand drifted toward his side, where a service weapon would typically be holstered under his jacket, a habitual check that most security personnel developed, though Castle's movement appeared slightly different from standard protocol. When they reached the front of the line, Castle looked up with momentary surprise before masking it with professional neutrality. Officer Collins, didn't expect to see you back here. Castle's voice remained even, but his posture had subtly shifted to increase distance between them. Perimeter rotation, Matt explained casually, plus checking communication protocols since we had that radio glitch earlier. He gestured toward his earpiece. How's your equipment functioning? Standard operational parameters, Castle replied, without hesitation, using correct terminology, though the encrypted channel was dropping intermittently during the secretary's arrival. The response was technically perfect, and therein lay its flaw. The encrypted channels had been functioning flawlessly. The technical team had confirmed this during the morning briefing. Castle had provided the expected answer rather than the accurate one, a subtle tell that Matt might have missed if not for Riot's persistent alerting. Matt nodded as if satisfied. They're working on it. By the way, are you on Jameson's team or Reynolds for this deployment? The question was pure fabrication. Neither were supervisors for this event. Castle hesitated for just a microsecond. Jameson's. We transferred in from the Pittsburgh field office last month. Matt kept his expression neutral despite the confirmation of his suspicions. The Secret Service had no Pittsburgh field office. They operated out of resident offices in Pennsylvania, not field offices. Thought you looked familiar. I worked protection detail with some Pittsburgh agents last year. Matt kept his tone conversational, while subtly shifting position to block Castle's clearest path of movement. Strange we haven't crossed paths before. Riot had positioned himself precisely where he'd been trained, slightly behind and to the right of a potential threat, ready to intervene if necessary. Castle's eyes darted to the dog, then back to Matt, awareness dawning that this wasn't a casual conversation. "Security community's smaller than people think," Castle replied, his accent subtly shifting as his focus intensified, "though I was deployed overseas much of last year." "Where abroad?" Matt asked, maintaining eye contact while using hand signals to alert a nearby security officer. The prearranged movement, adjusting his collar twice, communicated potential threat without radio communication Castle might monitor. "Primarily diplomatic security in Eastern Europe," Castle answered, his right hand drifting casually toward his jacket. "Warsaw, primarily." The nearby officer had received Matt's signal, approaching with deliberate casualness while alerting others through his own communication system. Matt needed to keep Castle engaged until backup was properly positioned. "I've got a buddy in the Warsaw detail, Jake Liston. You know him?" Castle smiled thinly. "Can't say I do. Large team." "That's surprising. Jake runs the entire operation there." The fabricated name confirmed what Matt already suspected. Castle was working from prepared cover information rather than actual experience. The officer's eyes hardened, recognition that his cover was compromised reflecting in his expression. "Listen," Matt said, his tone shifting to calm professionalism as he noted additional officers moving into position nearby. "There seems to be some confusion with your credentials. Why don't we go to the command center and sort this out?" Castle's assessment was immediate and calculating. He was surrounded with limited escape options. His hand inched closer to his concealed weapon. "Identification verification is standard protocol," Matt continued, his hand now resting near his own sidearm. "I'm sure it's just a mix-up." Castle's eyes moved systematically, evaluating options. Two security officers now stood casually nearby, hands near their weapons. Behind him, another checkpoint officer had been quietly alerted to the situation. "Of course," Castle finally replied, his voice betraying no emotion. "Lead the way." Matt gestured toward the nearby security office. "Just through here," he said, maintaining his professional demeanor while positioning himself at the tactical angle he'd been trained for, close enough to respond, but not directly in a potential line of fire. Castle moved with measured steps, his body language shifting subtly from the Secret Service officer persona he'd maintained to something more predatory. The transition was nearly imperceptible to untrained observers, but unmistakable to Matt, who'd spent years reading such micro-expressions. As they reached the office entrance, Lieutenant Ramirez appeared at the corridor intersection, his presence confirming to Castle that this wasn't a routine check. The realization triggered an immediate shift in demeanor. "Before we do this," Castle said, his accent now carrying a slight Hispanic inflection that hadn't been present before, "I should contact my supervisor to notify him of the delay." "Of course," Matt replied, positioning himself to block a clear exit path. "You can use the secure line inside." Castle's hand moved toward his jacket pocket, the motion deliberately casual. "I have his direct number here." The movement was textbook diversion. Matt had seen it in tactical training scenarios. "Sir, please keep your hands visible until we complete verification," he instructed, his voice hardening with authority. Time compressed into crystallized moments of heightened awareness. Castle's eyes narrowed fractionally, his weight shifting to the balls of his feet in preparation for action. Riot sensed the change instantly, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. "Just reaching for my credentials," Castle said, his right hand continuing its movement toward the concealed weapon. "Sir, hands where I can see them. Now!" Matt's command left no room for misinterpretation, his own hand moving to his holster. The facade dropped completely. Castle exploded into action with professional efficiency, his hand emerging from his jacket with a compact, semi-automatic pistol. The movement was blindingly fast, the mark of someone with specialized combat training. "Weapon!" Matt shouted, drawing his own sidearm. As Castle brought his weapon to bear, Riot launched forward with explosive power, precisely as he'd been trained for armed threat scenarios. The Belgian Malinois targeted Castle's gun arm with remarkable accuracy, his powerful jaws clamping around the forearm just as the weapon discharged. The shot went wide, the bullet embedding in the ceiling as Riot's impact disrupted Castle's aim and balance. The second shot came as they grappled, the sound reverberating through the corridor and triggering immediate response protocols throughout the building. Matt moved to engage, but Castle demonstrated extraordinary combat skills even with a dog attached to his arm. He pivoted, using the wall for leverage as he attempted to dislodge Riot while bringing his weapon around toward Matt. Lieutenant Ramirez and the additional security officers converged on the struggle, their weapons drawn. "Drop the gun! Drop it now!" Ramirez commanded as they closed distance. Castle made a split-second calculation, realizing he was outmaneuvered. In a final desperate attempt, he managed a third shot that shattered a nearby light fixture, sending glass raining down as a distraction. Matt seized the momentary confusion to tackle Castle's legs, disrupting his balance completely. They crashed to the floor together, Riot maintaining his grip on Castle's arm despite violent attempts to dislodge him. The gun skittered across the tile as Ramirez kicked it away from reach. "I've got his arm!" Matt shouted, applying a joint lock while another officer secured Castle's legs. Riot maintained his hold until Matt gave the specific release command. "Riot, release, and secure." The dog immediately disengaged but remained focused on Castle, ready to re-engage if commanded. Blood seeped through Castle's sleeve where Riot's teeth had penetrated, but the wound appeared controlled, precisely the measured force Riot had been trained to apply. "Suspect secured," Ramirez confirmed as they handcuffed Castle, who had ceased resistance once fully restrained. Within seconds, additional response teams flooded the corridor, establishing a security perimeter as emergency protocols activated throughout the facility. Throughout the building, security teams moved VIPs to secure locations, while additional officers established containment zones to ensure no further threats existed. The summit had instantly transformed from diplomatic event to potential attack scene, with all security assets mobilizing according to well-rehearsed protocols. As Castle was secured and searched, Matt turned his attention to Riot, checking the dog quickly for injuries while maintaining situational awareness. "Good boy," he murmured, finding no wounds on his partner. "Good boy." Castle watched this interaction with cold calculation, his expression revealing nothing, as security officers discovered a secondary weapon in an ankle holster and what appeared to be specialized communications equipment in his jacket lining. "You're making a mistake," Castle said in perfect, unaccented English. "I am Secret Service." "We'll sort that out shortly," Ramirez replied professionally, directing officers to escort the suspect to a secure holding area. "Right after we verify your actual identity, Mr. Castle." The command center had transformed into a hub of controlled urgency. Video feeds from throughout the complex displayed on wall-mounted screens, while communications officers coordinated with external agencies and internal security teams. Matt sat at a debriefing table, Riot positioned vigilantly beside him, as senior officials assessed the rapidly evolving situation. The ID badges, expertly forged, confirmed technical specialist Zhang, placing the credential under a specialized scanner. Appears legitimate under standard inspection, but the embedded RFID has been modified to bypass our verification systems. Very sophisticated work. Deputy Director Hayes nodded grimly. "And the weapon?" "Glock 26 with modifications consistent with professional wet work," reported the ballistics specialist. "Serial numbers removed, custom suppressor threading, specialized subsonic ammunition, not standard issue for any U.S. agency." Lieutenant Ramirez joined them, tablet in hand. "Fingerprint analysis just came back. Our officer Castle is actually Francisco Ibarra, known associate of the Sinaloa Cartel's Specialized Operations Division. He's been linked to at least 3 high-profile assassinations in South America, though never with enough evidence for prosecution." The revelation sent a ripple of tension through the command center. What had initially seemed a potential security breach had escalated to an assassination attempt on American soil. Zhang brought up images on the central screen. Compact fiber optic camera system, multiple identification credentials with his photo under different names, specialized communications device, with encryption beyond commercial standards. And this, she magnified an image of what appeared to be a fountain pen. Ballistics is analyzing it now, but preliminary assessment suggests a single-shot device disguised as a writing instrument, likely a backup weapon or specialized delivery system. The implications were clear. Ibarra had infiltrated the summit with the tools and weapons necessary for a targeted assassination, bypassing layers of security with forgeries sophisticated enough to withstand routine inspection. Had Riot not alerted on him, the outcome might have been catastrophic. The Secretary of Defense was his likely target, Hayes concluded, reviewing the summit schedule, based on Ibarra's position and movement pattern throughout the morning. "Collins," Hayes said, turning to Matt, "your K9 made this save when multiple layers of sophisticated security failed. I want detailed documentation of exactly what triggered his alert for analysis and potential implementation in training protocols." "Yes, sir," Matt replied, reaching down to scratch behind Riot's ears, a small gesture of appreciation that the dog acknowledged with a soft exhale, his attention never leaving the command center's activity. 3 days after the incident, Matt sat in the secure briefing room at FBI headquarters, Riot resting attentively at his feet. The initial emergency had evolved into a methodical multi-agency investigation, with Matt and Riot requested specifically to aid in the ongoing case. FBI Special Agent Teresa Vasquez led the briefing, displaying a comprehensive profile of Ibarra on the main screen. "Former Mexican Special Forces with additional training we believe occurred in Eastern Europe, potentially Russia, disappeared from official records approximately 8 years ago, resurfacing as a suspected contract operative for various criminal organizations." The screen displayed surveillance photos from multiple countries. The same man appearing with different hairstyles, facial hair configurations, and clothing styles, a chameleon adapting to each environment while maintaining operational security. His infiltration of the summit represents one of the most sophisticated penetrations of U.S. security protocols we've documented, Vasquez continued. The credential forgeries incorporated actual RFID signatures copied from legitimate Secret Service identification, suggesting either inside assistance or an extraordinary technical capability. "Officer Collins," Vasquez addressed him directly, "we've analyzed the security footage from the summit, particularly focusing on the interactions between your K9 and Ibarra. Can you elaborate on what triggered your partner's alert?" Riot received specialized training and behavioral assessment through an experimental program with Homeland Security, Matt explained. "He's particularly sensitive to subtle physiological changes that indicate deception or threatening intent, microexpressions, changes in breathing patterns, stress responses that humans typically miss. Essentially, your dog detected what our behavioral analysts and multiple security checkpoints missed," noted CIA Representative Anderson, skepticism evident in his tone. "With respect, sir," Matt replied, "Riot wasn't responding to the forgeries themselves, but to Ibarra's physiological state, the heightened awareness, controlled stress, and focus typical of someone in a combat operational mindset. The dog recognized the predator hiding among the protectors. We've identified 3 distinct components to Ibarra's plan," Vasquez continued. "Primary assassination method would have been the modified pen device, a delivery system for a highly concentrated neurotoxin that would have caused death within minutes, but potentially been misdiagnosed as a natural medical event without specific toxicology screening." Matt listened with growing appreciation for Riot's intervention. The Belgian Malinois had sensed the threat long before the operation progressed to either execution phase, preventing a catastrophe through pure instinct and training. As the meeting concluded, Director Hampton of Homeland Security approached Matt directly. "Officer Collins, I understand you and Riot are scheduled to return to regular duty tomorrow." "Yes, sir," Matt confirmed, "unless we're needed further for this investigation." Hampton shook his head. "The investigation continues, but your direct involvement has concluded for now. I wanted to personally thank you and your partner for your actions. The Secretary has been briefed on how close we came." Matt nodded, accepting the gravity of the director's words. "Just doing our job, sir." "That's just it," Hampton replied. glancing down at Riot, who maintained perfect sitting position despite the extended briefing. Your team did something extraordinary that all our technology and human assets missed. I've authorized expansion of the behavioral detection K9 program based on this incident. We need more teams with your capabilities. The following morning found Matt and Riot back on regular patrol at Reagan National Airport. Their routine resumed despite the weight of recent events. The summit incident had been reported in the media as a security concern that was swiftly addressed, the public never learning how close the country had come to a potential security crisis. As they walked their familiar route through the terminal, Matt noticed the subtle changes in how other officers regarded them. Word had spread through law enforcement channels about their role in the incident, earning nods of respect from colleagues who previously viewed the K9 unit as support rather than frontline protection. "Back to normal, buddy," Matt said quietly to Riot as they passed a security checkpoint. The Belgian Malinois walked with the same focused intensity he always demonstrated on duty, but Matt sensed a deeper connection between them after the Ibarra incident, a reinforced trust that transcended their standard working relationship. As the afternoon sun filtered through the airport's massive windows, Matt and Riot completed their final patrol circuit for the shift. At the K9 unit's designated break area, Matt removed Riot's tactical vest, signaling the end of their duty. The dog's transformation was immediate, his professional alertness giving way to more relaxed body language as he accepted a drink from the bowl Matt filled for him. "Good work today," Matt said quietly, watching his partner lap water after the long shift. He thought about how close they'd come to disaster at the summit, how Riot's persistent alerting on Ibarra had quite possibly prevented an international crisis. As Matt gathered their equipment, he caught Riot watching him with those intelligent amber eyes that seemed to understand far more than anyone could explain through training manuals or behavioral science. "Yeah, I know," Matt said with a slight smile. "You were right all along." The dog tilted his head slightly, as if agreeing with the assessment. As they walked toward the staff exit, several officers nodded in acknowledgement, the silent respect of colleagues who had heard about their role in the summit incident. Outside, the late afternoon light cast long shadows across the parking area as Handler and K9 headed home, their partnership stronger than ever through the silent understanding that sometimes instinct transcends all other systems of protection. Have you ever witnessed an animal sense something dangerous that humans completely missed? Animals possess natural instincts that often surpass our most sophisticated technology, allowing them to detect threats we might never perceive until it's too late. What experiences have you had with animals whose warnings turned out to be critically important? Would you trust your partner's instincts even if it meant questioning someone in authority? In critical moments, the courage to follow intuition, despite potential professional risk, can make all the difference between safety and disaster. When have you trusted your instincts against conventional wisdom and been proven right? If today's story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary canine stories delivered daily. Don't forget to press the notification bell so you never miss our new uploads. Share this video with friends and family who appreciate remarkable stories about police dogs and their handlers. Check out our previous K9 hero stories appearing on your screen right now, including the incredible tale of a tracking dog who found a missing child in a blizzard when all human search efforts had failed. We'll see you tomorrow, same time, with another brand new video.